What if everything you know about gardening is backwards? Right now, at this very moment, you're probably planning to replant your vegetables next spring. Tomatoes, peppers, maybe some cucumbers. You'll do the same thing next year, and the year after that. But here's what nobody told you. 2,000 years ago, farmers planted once and harvested for 25 consecutive years. They fed an empire of 50 million people without a single bag of fertilizer, without pesticides, without machinery, just pure observation and genius. And the craziest part, we forgot almost all of it. Stay with me because what I'm about to share will completely transform the way you think about growing food. These aren't gardening tips. This is a lost manual for feeding the world sustainably. And by the end of this video, you'll know secrets that 99% of modern gardeners have never even heard of. The ancient Romans weren't just warriors and builders, they were agricultural scientists. Their greatest minds, people like Cato, Varro, and Columella, they didn't just write poetry or philosophy. They wrote massive, detailed manuals on how to feed an empire forever, and modern science is only now catching up to what they figured out 2 millennia ago. I've gone deep into these ancient texts and pulled out the 10 most powerful techniques that still work today. Techniques that can turn your backyard into a permanent food source. Let's start with something that's going to blow your mind. The Romans didn't believe in annual planting. They thought that was inefficient and honestly kind of stupid. Instead, they built what I call food installations, permanent systems that produced for decades without replanting. Take asparagus. We barely grow it today because it seems complicated, but the Romans were obsessed with it, and their method was absolutely brilliant. They would dig beds deep into the earth, fill them with rich compost mixed with sand for perfect drainage, and then plant asparagus crowns 8 inches down, way deeper than most modern guides tell you. Then here's the wild part, they just walked away. That single planting would produce thick, delicious spears every single spring for an entire generation. 25 years of harvests from one afternoon of work. Modern soil science has proven why this works. When you plant asparagus that deep, it develops a root system so massive and so complex that it essentially becomes indestructible. It's pulling nutrients from depths most plants can't even reach. Here's how you replicate this yourself. Build yourself a raised bed or dig out a dedicated space. Fill it with compost and sand. That drainage is critical. Plant your asparagus crowns 8 inches deep, yes, deeper than the packet says. Water them well that first season to help them establish, then largely ignore them. By year 3, you'll start harvesting, and you'll keep harvesting for the next 20 years. But here's the thing, a permanent bed like that needs permanent fertility, and the Romans didn't have chemical nitrogen. They didn't have synthetic fertilizers shipped in from factories. They had something far better. They had observation. Columella, one of the greatest agricultural writers in Roman history, wrote something profound. He said that lupin beans were equal in effect to animal manure itself. He was describing nitrogen fixation hundreds of years before we understood the science. Legumes, beans, peas, clover, lupins. These plants host bacteria in their roots that literally pull nitrogen out of thin air and convert it into plant food. It's free fertilizer, perfect fertilizer. And the Romans planted these everywhere. They grew them between rows of grain. They planted them as a living carpet beneath their grapevines. Imagine entire vineyards that fertilized themselves while producing wine. That's not luck, that's genius. Here's your takeaway, never plant a bed with just one crop. Always include a legume somewhere in the mix. Let pole beans climb up your corn stalks. Plant clover as a living mulch around your fruit trees. Grow peas in early spring, then plant your tomatoes in that exact same spot. The peas will have already fed the soil for you. You're not adding fertilizer. You're designing the system so it feeds itself. This philosophy of balance was at the core of everything the Romans did. They understood something we've completely forgotten in modern agriculture. You cannot grow the same crop in the same place year after year. It's a recipe for disaster. Disease builds up, pests multiply, the soil gets depleted. The Romans perfected what they called the 3-field rotation. Year 1, you grow heavy feeders, things like wheat, cabbage, broccoli. These are nutrient-hungry plants. Year 2, you switch to light feeders. Turnips, carrots, herbs, these take less from the soil. Year 3, and this is the key, you plant legumes. Beans, peas, clover, these restore everything. They rebuild the nitrogen, they break pest cycles, and then only then you go back to heavy feeders. It sounds complicated, but it's actually simple. Divide your garden into 3 or 4 sections, keep a tiny notebook. If your tomatoes and peppers were in section A this year, plant beans there next year, then something light, then back to tomatoes. You've just broken the disease cycle and built fertility for free. No fertilizer purchases, no soil amendments, just rotation. But the Romans didn't stop at soil management. Their genius extended to the entire design of their farms. This next technique is so clever it almost seems like science fiction. They didn't grow grapevines on dead wooden posts like we do today. That seemed wasteful to them. Instead, they married the vines to living trees. The vines would climb elm trees or poplars. The tree acted as a permanent living trellis that never needed replacing. When they pruned the tree's leaves, those leaves became free fodder for their animals. And beneath the canopy, they grew nitrogen-fixing clover. Between the rows of trees, they planted grain. Think about that for a second. One field, 4 different harvests, wine from the grapes, fodder from the tree leaves, fertilizer from the clover, grain from the ground. This is what permaculture experts today call stacking functions. The Romans were doing it 2,000 years ago at massive scale. You can do a simplified version of this right now. Instead of putting in a dead wooden post for your grapevines, plant a hardy, deep-rooted tree like black locust. Black locust also fixes nitrogen, by the way. Train your grapevine to climb it. Plant herbs and clover underneath. You've just created a multi-story food forest in your backyard. Different plants at different heights, all supporting each other. This same obsessive engineering applied even to the rocks on the ground. If you've ever walked through Roman ruins, you've seen stones everywhere. That wasn't just leftover rubble, that was intentional. In the dry Mediterranean climate where they farmed, stone mulch was a complete game changer. During the day, those stones would absorb heat from the sun. At night, they'd slowly release that heat, protecting sensitive plants from cold snaps. But more importantly, they acted like a lid on the soil. They cut water evaporation by up to 50%, and they provided habitat for lizards and beneficial insects that ate pests naturally. If you live in a hot climate, try this around your perennial plants. Your fruit trees, rosemary bushes, lavender, lay down a 2-inch layer of river rock or gravel. You'll protect your soil and save massive amounts of water. The rocks do the work for you. The Romans didn't just manage their climate, they learned to defy it entirely. In the 1st century, Emperor Tiberius demanded fresh melons in the middle of winter. His gardeners had to deliver or probably lose their heads. So what did they do? Pliny the Elder documented their solution. They built growing beds on wheels. During the day, they'd roll these beds out into the sunlight. On cold nights, they'd roll them back under protective frames glazed with a transparent stone called lapis specularis. This was the specularium, the world's first greenhouse, in winter 2,000 years ago. Now you probably don't want to build beds on wheels, but here's the practical version, the Roman hotbed. In the fall, dig a pit about 3 feet deep. Fill the bottom 2 feet with fresh hot manure. Horse manure or chicken manure mixed with straw works best. Cover that with 1 foot of good soil. As that manure decomposes over the winter, it generates heat, free heat, enough to let you grow lettuce, spinach, and greens all winter long, even in cold climates. You've just extended your growing season by months without electricity or heating bills. That manure wasn't just for heating either. The Romans were absolute masters of composting. Columella actually ranked different types of manure with scientific precision. Bird droppings were the best, highly concentrated nitrogen. Human waste was second, but it had to be aged properly for safety. Cattle and sheep manure were the reliable workhorses, but here's the critical detail. They never applied any of this raw. Raw manure burns plants and wastes half the nutrients. They always aged it. They composted it with straw for months, creating rich, stable humus, dark, crumbly, perfect soil. Your lesson is simple. If you have access to manure, never put it fresh on your plants. Compost it first. Mix it with straw or leaves and let it sit for 6 to 12 months. You're not just making fertilizer, you're making soil, real living soil. This obsession with detail scaled up to entire orchards. This next one is my personal favorite. The Romans were obsessed with planting patterns. Columella insisted that the best way to plant an orchard was in what he called the Quincunx. That's the 5-dot pattern you see on dice. 1 plant at each corner of a square and 1 right in the center. This wasn't just aesthetic, it was mathematical perfection. The offset pattern ensures that every single plant receives maximum sunlight from all angles throughout the day. Air circulation is optimized, which means way less disease. Root competition is minimized because the plants aren't directly in line with each other. When you're planting your fruit trees or even just your tomato plants, don't plant them in a boring straight grid. Stagger them. Use that offset pattern. It's such a simple change, but it dramatically improves sun exposure and airflow. Your plants will thank you with bigger yields and fewer problems. Once their trees were perfectly positioned, the Romans managed them with incredible long-term vision. They didn't prune just to get fruit this season. Columella wrote that pruning must serve 3 purposes simultaneously: produce fruit, select the strongest shoots, and make the plant long-lived. Their goal wasn't just this year's harvest, it was creating trees that would feed their grandchildren. When you prune your fruit trees, think about structure. You're not just removing branches, you're sculpting a plant that will be healthy and productive for decades. Create an open center so sunlight reaches everywhere. Remove competing branches. Build a strong framework. You're investing in the future, not just the present. This combination of deep knowledge and long-term thinking led to their final and most important principle. The Romans didn't fight their land. They didn't try to force plants to grow where they didn't belong. They listened. They observed. Columella wrote with absolute certainty that barley tolerates no place except one that is loose and dry. He also noted that heavy, chalky, wet soil was perfect for winter wheat. They catalogued their soils by texture, by drainage, by color. They knew that volcanic soil near Naples was ideal for grapevines. They knew clay was perfect for certain grains. Stop fighting your soil. Does your yard have heavy clay that never seems to drain? Stop trying to fix it with sand and amendments. Just plant things that love clay. Brassicas like cabbage and broccoli. Pear trees, they'll thrive. Is your soil sandy and dry? Perfect. Plant rosemary, lavender, Mediterranean herbs. They prefer drainage. Work with what you have, not against it. You'll save yourself years of frustration and your plants will actually be happy. Let's step back for a moment and see the bigger pattern here. These 10 techniques aren't random gardening hacks. They're a complete philosophy, a system. The Romans understood something fundamental that we've forgotten. You cannot endlessly take from the soil without giving back. Every harvest creates a debt, and that debt must be repaid with organic matter, with nitrogen-fixing plants, with careful rotation, with respect for the living system beneath your feet. They built permanent installations, asparagus beds that lasted decades, grape arbors, olive groves that outlasted the empire itself. Some of those olive trees are still producing today, 2,000 years later. They captured free energy from everywhere, from decomposition, from bacteria, from the sun. Every single technique reduced labor while increasing yields. That's true efficiency, not more work, smarter work. Modern industrial agriculture made a different choice. It chose short-term yields powered by chemical intervention, synthetic fertilizers, pesticides, heavy machinery. And for a while it worked. Yields exploded, but we're now seeing the cost. Soil degradation worldwide, water depletion, collapsing pollinator populations, dead zones in our oceans from fertilizer runoff. The system is breaking. And here's the ironic part. The solutions we're desperately searching for aren't new. They're not cutting-edge technology. They're written in Latin, preserved in the texts of Columella, Varro, and Pliny. The Romans proved this system works at scale. They fed 50 million people for over 1,000 years on soil that got richer, not poorer, with every passing decade. This knowledge isn't lost. It's just forgotten. It's waiting for us to remember that the most revolutionary idea in agriculture might be 2,000 years old. That sustainability isn't some modern invention. It's what humans did successfully for millennia before we convinced ourselves we could outsmart nature. If this opened your eyes to something new, if you're looking at your garden differently now, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Share this video with someone who gardens or someone who cares about where their food comes from. Every share helps preserve this ancient wisdom, because the next generation needs to know that there's another way, a better way, a way that actually works long term. The vault is open, the knowledge is here, now it's up to us to use it.